This is the Illinois River. It's the 2nd of May, 2019. And presently I would call this moderate flooding. Pretty normal for springtime, I guess. So right about there, underneath the top of the fence, that's the high water mark. I've seen the water get that high before. About 6 years ago we had a flood where it got that high and just almost got into my shop. Well, I just pulled up the NOAA website, so it looks like it's in the moderate flood stage now. It's supposed to come up at least my height between now and the end of the weekend. So that'll be fun. See, I'm about eye level with that high water mark right now. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're working on my 1995 Ford F-250 with the 7.3 Powerstroke diesel engine. And this truck is well into a phase of ownership known as nickel and dime, and she needs a little bit of work. What we're going after today is oil leaks. So it's been sitting here on the lift for about 20 minutes maybe, and that's the various fluids that have leaked on the floor. So I think the main culprit is the dipstick tube. Oh, let's see. So there's where the dipstick fitting goes through the side of the oil pan, and she's leaking quite a bit of oil out of that fitting. It's also, for whatever reason, leaking quite a bit of fuel. It's coming, I think, dripping down from the valley, so we'll have to take a look at that. This truck's been previously mangled by its former owner, or I should say modified, same thing. So to fix that leaking dipstick tube, what we're going to try to do is use this kit that I bought from dieselorings.com, and inside the kit it comes with a new nut for the outside of the bulkhead fitting, a fiber gasket that goes behind the nut, a brush that I guess is supposed to hold everything together while we work on it, a new O-ring for the dipstick itself, and some of this flange sealant. And there should be an O-ring in there too, I believe. So it comes with a few pages of cheat codes here. We'll get into that later. Yeah, so we got an O-ring, a fiber washer, and a new nut for the outside of that fitting. So I guess what we're supposed to do is take everything apart, replace the O-ring, and then we use this flange sealant here and the new gasket and nut to sort of hopefully seal up the outside. And then we'll replace the O-ring on the end of the dipstick tube itself. Now the trick to this is we're going to do this without removing the oil pan, because to remove the oil pan on this truck is it's a major job. You can do it without removing the engine, but I mean, it's a lot of work. You got to remove the transmission and turbocharger and engine mounts, and pick the whole thing up, and we don't want to get into that. And the oil pan, I believe, does not have a gasket. It uses RTV silicone, so once you crack that thing off there, you gotta clean all that up and reapply the silicone and set the thing back up there. And actually, if you read the Ford manual, it tells you to do it with the engine sitting upside down. So let's not do that. Now there's also a service kit available from International, and as far as I can tell from the International part numbers, it gets rid of the O-ring entirely and they just use RTV silicone. So I guess worst case scenario, we could always do that. Alright, disconnect main battery cables on both batteries, remove starter. Alright, well, let's get into it. There we go, 16. Oh, come on, don't do that to me. There we go. Now there's a clamp on the dipstick up by the valve cover, and I took that loose before I raised the truck up. Oh, come on. There we go. Just tuck that out of the way. Now we shouldn't have to drain the oil out because the oil level should be below that fitting. But I better make sure, we better check the cheat sheet. Okay, we're supposed to loosen up this nut but not take it all the way off. Okay. Then the kit comes with this brush. It's like a bore brush that you're supposed to jam down in here. Oh, fudge. Oh, there we go. Now we take this all the way off. Okay, there's the old nut. I better clean that up before we go any further. Ah, there's our problem. Look at that, she done broke. Well, I think we might be hooped on this job. Let me see if I can show you what I'm seeing here. Alright guys, I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not on the camera, but do you see how this, see how this outer ring, it should be basically flat on the back side of this adapter. So the outer ring is actually pushed inward, and the whole groove where the O-ring goes is pushed inward. I don't think there's any point in putting an O-ring back in there. It's just going to pop right back out. Alright, so there's a section of the instructions here that deals with this problem. And it says basically if the flange is distorted for whatever reason, probably in my case somebody tried to tighten it to seal that up. Or, you know, the O-ring could have swelled and done it on its own, I don't know. But anyway, it basically says to use some gray silicone, you know, RTV silicone, instead of using the flange sealer, and allow 24 hours for the RTV to dry. So I'm thinking what we're going to do is just leave the O-ring out completely. It's not going to do anything anyway. The whole O-ring groove is distorted so far that it's not even going to contact the face of the pan. So I think we're just going to try to silicone our way out of this. Man, I feel like a hack just saying that. Okay guys, here it goes. I'm going to do just what we talked about. Put silicone right in here in the O-ring bead. and the nut. Okay. I think that's good enough. Okay, that's it. So I went ahead and installed a new O-ring on the dipstick tube here. There we go. Alright, you can't tell, but I've also pre-filled the oil filter, which everyone will also tell you shouldn't do, but I always do it. Also, lots of theories out there about how tight to tighten oil filters. And some manufacturers have specs where it's like you go till you touch and then you go another quarter turn, or you go till you touch and you go another 3/4 of a turn, or whatever. I always just tighten them as tight as I can tighten them by hand. Like that. And if you have to put a wrench on it, that's too tight. Okay guys, starter motor's back in, and I'm ready to put the truck back down on the ground. Well, kind of hard to say on the fuel leak. It's definitely coming out of the valley. You see down in here, there's a couple of hose clamps on this steel line, and I tightened those up quite a bit. I think that was probably the main source of it. You can see this has been modified pretty extensively from what it's supposed to be. The previous owner had some interesting ideas about the fuel system. He got rid of the mechanical fuel pump that's normally there, and the whole fuel bowl, and replaced it with an electric pump and whatever this stuff is. So I guess kind of like the Super Duty style, but I'm not sure I agree with his plumbing methods. Anyway, it does work, it's just obviously there are some issues. Okay guys, I'm not sure how we should feel about this repair. It feels a little bit like a hack job to me. I mean, you take the thing apart, you put a bunch of silicone on it, you put it back together, and you kind of hope for the best. But I've been driving the truck for a couple days now, and it hasn't leaked a drop. So I think we're going to call it a win, even if it doesn't feel quite right. Now, I made this little drawing here because I don't think it was clear from looking at the actual parts. It's really hard to see this thing's inside the oil pan, but when the parts were originally installed, this is what it should have looked like. So this O-ring groove here basically holds the O-ring, and it seals between the oil pan and the original nut, and all the sealing was done on the inside. So what we found when we opened it up is that this flange portion of the inside of the adapter was actually bent out, and this drawing is not really an exaggeration. That's how badly it was bent. And you can see, that's the original O-ring that's split, and it's actually swollen, twice the diameter of the new O-ring. So I don't know if someone tried to over-tighten this nut, or if the swelling of the O-ring caused this to happen. I can't say, but that's the reason I did not install the new O-ring, is because this flange is bent out so badly. I just didn't see where it was going to do any good, and I don't want the O-ring to split like the old one and be floating around inside the oil pan. So we just left it out. We used silicone here, and then we used the new fiber washer, and then the new nut that comes with the kit is the flange diameter is a bit larger than the original nut. And actually, if you look at the nut, the old nut, you can see that it's bent too. Hopefully that shows up on the camera. and the whole threaded portion of it's actually like sucked in. And it tells you in the instructions that, you know, you have to be careful of the threads, and they sell a thread file specifically for, you know, cleaning up the threads on the adapter, because, you know, it puts a lot of force on those threads. I didn't do that. I probably should have, but that's okay. And then I didn't use the Ford, you know, the factory Ford silicone. I used the FIPG stuff that I had from the Toyota job. So this is, I believe, made by 3Bond, which is a 3M brand, but it seems like it's very good quality RTV, you know, if there is such a thing. And another good one I know of is called Yamabond. So I know this is a very common problem, and I'm not very impressed with these parts. You know, this nut is some kind of a zinc casting or something. It's not magnetic in any way. And I'm assuming that the adapter inside the oil pan is the same kind of material. So there's a lot of kits out there that you can buy to fix this issue. You know, it's an extremely common problem. You know, all the way from like a $300 deal that bolts on the outside that has O-rings on the outside of the oil pan, to, you know, you can buy like a Dorman replacement for the actual adapter. And then, you know, like I said, I bought this kit from dieselorings.com. I'm not sure it's really worth $50 for a kit that has 2 O-rings, 1 nut, 1 gasket, and a little bit of flange sealant. But if it seals up the oil leak and fixes the problem, then I guess I'm okay with it. So anyway, I'll put up a link to where you can buy this kit if you want to try it yourself. And yeah, we'll move on to the next project. Unfortunately, the oil cooler is leaking on the opposite side of the engine. So I resealed the oil cooler about, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago, because the O-rings in the actual cooler itself were leaking. Well, now the pedestal is leaking where it bolts, the pedestal bolts to the block. So there must be a problem with that gasket or something. So I'm going to have to take that apart and fix that issue. So always something. What a difference a few days makes. This is the same location. And you see that whole area where I was standing in the last part of the video is now underwater. And the building, the gray building where I showed you the high water mark, it's completely flooded now. So the geese are pretty happy, like I said, but they're about the only ones. So currently the river's at 26.5 feet. They revised the forecast. It's supposed to come up to 28 feet now, so another 1.5 feet. So even where I'm standing right now will be underwater. These carp are absolutely massive, and there must be a dozen of them in here right now. Yeah, there's 4 of them right there.